Okay, welcome to the next installment of this video series. This video is a continuation of intervals leading us into a discussion of chords. So, when I left off the last video, we had just talked about how intervals have two things. They have a quality and a quantity. To jog your memory from last time, quantity is the number. Think about quantity, how much. It's the number that describes the distance. And when we were dealing with quantity, we were counting, moving through letters in our scalar representation this way. And then we were talking about counting intervals by counting through changes between a space and a line on the staff. And so just to jog our memory, I'll throw down some notes here and we can figure out together what the interval quantity is. So let's say I have a note that's here on the center line. I'm going to make another one, and let's say it's in this top space. Now, remembering our every grizzly bear devours fries or face, we can determine that the middle line note is B and the top space note is E. And remember last time we were doing is we were drawing these lines, right, to kind of describe this. I'm just going to do this with my cursor here on the laptop. So remember, in Musicland, to determine the interval here, where you start, that counts as 1. So this B is 1. The space above it, where my cursor is now, is 2. The line above that is 3. And then the space above here is 4. So that's just to jog our memory about how we found the quantity. And that works going up or down. We also talked about the idea that you could move octaves around. So like what if we had, theoretically, if we had a note down here, and then I'm going to give it a little ledger line. Remember from one of our other modules that ledger lines are extensions of the scale. So right here, we could count down. Let's do it together. E, D, C, B. Again, that was bottom line was E. The space below it was D. The line below that was C, because we're going back in the alphabet. Then one more is B. This is our same interval that's happening. Now, this is context specific. Technically, this would be a compound interval because we're exceeding an octave. What I did was I dropped the B an octave to illustrate my point. In some situations, we would call this, it's still a fourth, but it's plus the octave, but it's not 4 plus 8. It's 4 plus 7 because that 1 counts again. Anyway, it's an 11th. Compound interval, a fourth is an 11th. Okay, anyway. But there might be some situations where we have a chord and with more notes involved. We'll see in a second. This is actually a good example because we're going to see this later on in this video. But if we had more notes involved, it would be common for people to collapse this down and either think about it in terms of the B going up or the E coming down and then saying, yeah, I know it's a compound interval. That's essentially an 11th, but for all intended purposes, it is the interval, in this case, of a fourth, right? It's kind of describing a type of interval as a fourth. If that's a little confusing, that's okay. You'll see as we go and as you go, in your studies that there are some situations where you would call it one or the other, and they're both right most of the time for an analytical purposes. Okay. That being said, we left off talking about how to determine the quality of the interval. And so what we're going to do is let's collapse this down to a smaller interval. It's a little more manageable. It's easier for us to see. So I'm going to move this to an E right here. And then remember the last video we talked about determining a major or minor second, and we talked about the use of a semitone. If you remember what a semitone was, let me write it over here. Semitone is equal to a half step. So when I say semitone, there's some situations where I mean a half step. If you've ever dabbled with a synthesizer or electronic music, semitones are that word is used a lot, and it seems like half step finds more. I don't want to say more, but like oftentimes it's a quicker word to go to when someone means something in music theory studies. But okay, anyway, who cares? So we can think about this in terms of like memorizing certain intervallic formulas. What do I mean? What I mean is we already determined that and I'm going to use lowercase m, this is notation for a minor second, equals, stop trying to help me, please. Go away. M2. I mean it. M2 equals 1 semitone, or 1 half step. Sure. And then we could say, you guessed it, a whole step, a major second. I'm going to put M2 equals 2 semitones, or 1 whole step, or 2 half steps, right? Very simple. Don't need these right now. So, well, we have the other intervals over here. Let's just go in order together and figure this out, and we can kind of play the game together here. So I'm going to move these notes, actually. I'm going to move them a little bit. So I used to use this as an illustration from last time. I'm actually going to move this lower note to C using a ledger line there. I'm going to use the ledger line, and we're going to imagine that that's a C. Why am I doing this? Well, if you can locate a C on the keyboard, that major scale is going to be all white keys. And so we can think about knowing what the next note is and then analyzing its quality that way. So if you're following along on a keyboard, this will be easy because you don't have to involve any of the black keys. So let's go here. What is the quantity of this interval? Give it a couple seconds. Let's count it together. So I have the note on this ledger line. There's a space above it. The way the sizes I've made these notes doesn't make that abundantly clear. There's space above it, and then there's the line that the note is on. So we have 1, the space is 2, and the note we arrive at is 3. The quantity is 3. Now the question, thinking about this statement over here, imperfect intervals, right? This so-called imperfect intervals. We have third amongst them, right? So, the question is whether it's a major or a minor third. Well, if you play those keys on the keyboard, I'll do it. I have a keyboard over here. I'm gonna, in the darkness over here, I have a keyboard. If I play them, I'm gonna turn up the volume so maybe it can be heard on the microphone. It sounds major. It is a major third. But let's think about this in terms of music theory here. So if I were to list this, let's list it down here. And actually, I'm gonna change the ordering of these things so that we're like going up. So let's say we have a major third. Okay. Well, Let's think about this. C to D. Bum, bum. Ear training time. Was that a minor second or a major second? It's a whole step. It's a major second between C to D. Okay? Let's hear D to E. Major second or minor second between those two? It's a major second. It's another whole step. So just to be clear, we're not like adding up the major second, like 2 equals 4. No, what we're doing is we're thinking about, okay, well, C to D was 2 semitones. And then D to E, it involved 2 more semitones. But let's think about it as 2 whole steps. So I'm going to put here 4 semitones, 2 whole steps. Or, right, some arrangement of 4 half steps. That's what happens when you switch keyboards all the time. So let's prove it. C to C sharp went up a half step. That's 1. C sharp to D is 2 half steps. D up to D sharp is another half step. Then lastly, D sharp to E, 4 half steps. 2 whole steps or 4 semitones. Okay, cool. But wait a minute. Have I missed one here? Yes, one has been skipped over. Can you imagine how we would take this, a C to E, and without moving the C, how we would make this from a major third into a minor third by changing a note? We could add a flat. We could add a flat here. So when I do that, I'm going to have a, no, do not capitalize it. Thank you. I'm going to have a B. Remember last time, we're going to pretend that's a flat. Okay. That flat is applying to, here, I'll spread them out a little bit. A flat is applying to the E. So it's E flat. Okay. Now we have shortened that from C to E here to C to E flat. The E came down. So let's put it here. Minor third, and it's going to tell me what to do. Okay. Minor third. Well, we lowered it by a half step. We lowered it by a semitone. We have 3 semitones or 1.5 steps or 3 half steps. Wait a minute. I hope you're seeing a pattern emerge here. That, yes, we're adding a half step each time. And so far, what we're building down here is an accounting of each note that is 1 half step higher than the one that came before it, and its intervallic relationship to the note at the bottom. So if I were to, just to be clear here, all y'all watching this, if I were to put down here the note C, let's pretend C is like right here, and that's where we're starting. The note that is a major second higher than C is D. The note that is a major third higher, we said it earlier, it was an E. And then what we can be thinking about is the major and minor, right? The minor versions over here, we would have D Well, D flat or, right, our C sharp. With this one, we would have D sharp / E flat. So you see where I'm going with this, right? These are these notes, of course, being represented by half steps, but these are the names as if you were going from here to that one. Boop, boop, minor second. Almost like I've created a little bit of a little graph here. If I had C to D, oh, that's a major second. It takes 2 semitones. What we're doing here is we're slowly representing the chromatic scale. And the chromatic scale is pretty easy to memorize. It's already up here. It's all the notes in our system. It's the 12 notes in our system. And so let's keep going with some of these intervals while we're at it. Okay. So what if I have this one now? I've moved this note up from E to an F. Now be careful. Be careful here because there seems to be a pattern. If you're brand new at this, this might not be obvious just yet. There's a pattern here, but something's going to get in the way of this appearing so cleanly right now. And can you imagine what that is? It's on the screen. Hint, it's on the screen. You look up there in the corner. These ones don't have a sharp or a flat in between them. We talked about that in an earlier video. That's right. So if we add just one more half step to that E, we're going to end up at the interval of a perfect fourth. And that equals 5 semitones, which of course is 2.5 steps, and of course is 5 half steps because they are the same as the semitones. And that note was F. Okay. I hope that's starting to make sense so far. Why some things are called major and some things are called perfect is going to have to take place in another video, or I'll bring it up in class or something. Anyway, we're going to keep going with this and not get off on a tangent because it's so easy for me to get off on a tangent about this kind of thing. So there, of course, is an F sharp. Of course there is. I'll put a sharp in there, make it big. Okay, we have F sharp now. C to F sharp. Well, that interval, right? Let me G flat, also known as G flat, right? Now, I'm going to put something special for this one. This one's special. This one gets the title, not of a perfect fourth. No, I'm just cloning these to go a little faster. It's a tritone. Tritone. Let me continue filling this out, and I want you to think about why is it called a tritone? Have you got it? Because there's three whole steps from the root, which happens to be C in this example. Tritone. You've definitely heard tritones. The Simpsons, or Do-da-dee-dee-da, if you like West Side Story, or Maria, also West Side Story. It's a lovely interval. It's a wonderful interval. Some people call it the devil's interval. Anyway, let's keep on going. And by the way, just to be clear, because I'm afraid of overlooking this later and not stating it. It's on my mind now. I want to be clear for you watching this video. if this is brand new to you, it is not that anything is particularly perfect fourthy about the note F or tritony about the note F sharp. It's that the notes like F, in my example, F and F sharp, they have this name in relation to C. If we were to change this note, it would shift things. Like what if we considered D to E? That'd be a whole step from D to E. That would be a major second from D to E, right? So it's in relation to where we're starting from. I'm starting from C so that you can easily play these on your keyboard, starting from a white key and not, yeah. Anyway, so let's continue. We're almost there with our discussion of intervals so far. And we will save augmented and diminished intervals for another time. I'll give you the idea of what they are and you can play around with it in your imagination. So if I get rid of the sharp and I go up here and I make it a G, you can already imagine what I have over here, right? Well, it's a fifth. Now we're at a fifth. So P5 is the notation for a perfect fifth. And that is going to be 7 semitones. Or 3.5 whole steps. Or 7 half steps. And then I'm going to have the G right here. Keeps going. I'm going to jump slightly ahead just for 1 second. Let's do our major 6, just jumping ahead a little bit, 9 semitones, and then we have 4 half steps, and then 9 half steps for the major 6. And that note would be what? What's a whole step? See the difference in semitones? What's a whole step above G? It's an A. A, hooray. And then I want to write this like so. We have G sharp / A flat. Now, this is a good example, and this is a good time to bring this up right here. So far, what I've been doing in this example is I've been going up to the major version, then dropping down to the minor version. Right, where I had the whole step, which is a major second, and then I dropped down to the minor second. All right, went up to the major third, and then dropped a half step down to the minor third. Now, you imagine if G, a perfect fifth, went up a half step, that would be an new word, augmented. It would be an augmented fifth because it was a perfect fifth and it got bigger. Augmented means to increase. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. So imagine we had C to G, that distance. G is the perfect fifth of C, right? It's perfect fifth above C. If we raise that note by a half step, we are increasing its distance from C. We are augmenting the interval. If you were to call it G sharp, that would be an augmented fifth. It's going to be very important in a second when we talk about chords. Okay, if we lowered A to A flat, we would call it a minor sixths. Well, they're functionally, in our system right now, essentially the same pitch. Well, they would have different functions based on different contexts, the specifics of which we don't know right now. And so, in a weird little kind of Schrodinger kind of indeterminacy, well, it's G sharp / A flat. It's that thing that's above G and below A, right? So knowing whether it's an augmented fifth or it's a minor sixth, it depends on what we're doing and what else is around it. That's all I can say right now without going off on the deep end. But I want to then to consider, what if we applied that kind of thinking to any of the aforementioned notes? Okay, well, what if you took a minor third and then dropped it by a half step and you had just 2 semitones rather than 3? Well, you could say that note, that hypothetical note, I'll say that again. What if we took this minor third above C, which is D sharp E flat? Technically, the minor third is E flat. Being clear, technically, the minor third is E flat. And what if I drop that a half step? It would functionally be D, functionally, but in terms of the notation, it would be E double flat, which is just flatted twice, and it sounds the same. And if you go to the keyboard, you'll notice if you flat E 2 times, you get a D. I know. But we would call this a diminished third because it was a major third, it got smaller, it was a minor third, and it got smaller again. It's a diminished third. This is another word for the tritone. If you lower the perfect fifth, right, you get a diminished fifth, not a minor fifth. With the perfect intervals, they're not minor. They become diminished. You could have such a thing as a diminished fourth. Would it sound like your major third? Functionally, it would sound that way. But there may be a purpose in the music for some reason to call it by that other name, depending on which direction it goes afterwards or whatever. Let me sum that up, what I just said, because that was a lot of information. So, essentially, major intervals going up equals when I say going up, I'm sorry, I'm going to be more specific. Increasing by 1 semitone, yeah, equals augmented. Major intervals decreasing by 1 semitone equals minor. And don't worry, I'm going to sum this up also because there's a lot of information here. I don't know why I did it that way. Let's do minor. Oops. Minor intervals increasing by 1 semitone. They become major. And then minor intervals decreasing by 1 semitone are diminished. Okay. Perfect intervals increasing by 1 semitone are augmented. Perfect intervals decreasing by 1 semitone are also diminished. I'm going to visualize this another way. Another way. Let's imagine we have, I'll put it over here. So right here I have a perfect interval. Perfect interval. Just pretend it's perfect, okay. If it goes up in pitch, it becomes, is there a faster way to insert a text box? Is there really no, there's no, never mind. There's no hotkey for that, okay. Anyway, augmented. I've been spoiled by Max. Becomes augmented. And if it goes down, it becomes, you guessed it, diminished. Whereas, if we have major, if major goes down, it becomes minor. What if minor goes down? The thing we were talking about becomes diminished. We would refer to it as diminished. And I think that we gather that that if we went from minor up, if minor increased, it would go up to major. Yeah. So let's think about it this way as well. This is another way for us to kind of memorize how these intervals get named. So at the risk of sounding pedantic, consider this situation that I have C, and the next note is a C sharp. What would be the intervallic description of these two notes? Well, what if I remove the sharp? Consider this. That interval is one that I didn't mark over here called a unison. A unison, it's the same note. We're singing in unison, imagine that. So if I were to sharp the C, it's not a perfect unison anymore, it's an augmented unison. Yep. But if you were to call that D flat, that'd be a minor second, because D is a second of any kind above C. But C and C is the same letter. This won't be the last time I say this, so this will keep coming up. But this is one of those like flanner points about how we call certain notes, certain names, and why. So I could have, what if I had C to E? We talked about this one already. This was it's over here, a major third. Why would you? You might be thinking, why would you do this, Timmy? Why would you do this? That was a major third that got increased. It's augmented. I know. So those of you at home are like, well, E sharp is the same as F. And I would say on the keyboard, the sounds will be the same on the keyboards we have. But it is not a perfect fourth because it's E sharp. I'm going to make it a perfect fourth, right? I'm going to make it a perfect fourth. Are you ready? Are you ready? Now it's a perfect fourth. Now it's a diminished fourth. So that's how this system works and how it is imagined. Do they cross over onto each other? Like what I mean is, do some notes, if you flat or sharp them enough, do they become other notes sounding. Yes, they do. I demonstrated earlier, if I double flat E, I end up with a D sound-wise. But it is an E double flat. That'd be a diminished third. I'm sorry, I'm making that face because that's not something that we encounter very often. But I'm using it to illustrate the idea that this system is completely flexible and consistent. So let's go back over here. I'm going to finish this. I've changed my mind. The chords is going to be another video. So sorry. This one's already gone on too long. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to duplicate. Why isn't there I got to look this up. There has to be a hotkey. Minor 6 or A5. So wait. See what I did there? I added the other name. But not 9 semitones. This is copy pasta. 8 semitones, right? And 4 steps, right? And 8 half steps. Okay, there we are. So, what would be the other name for a tritone? It could also be an A4, a raised fourth, or a 5 diminished 5. Let me organize this a little more. Move this out of the way. Get out of there. Okay. Let's keep going. We're almost there. We're almost there. Okay. So if I go over here and let's add the next alphabet note. I'm gonna go like this. B. Little copy pasta here. And I'm gonna put major 7th. Notice I'm skipping something, huh? Ah! Oh, no. Okay. Hold on. I'm just gonna put that there. What's this one? It's the same note, but it's higher now. It's not the same note. It's not a unison. It's a perfect octave. And you guessed it, 12 semitones, 6 steps, 12 half steps. What's the one that has to go in here? A sharp and B flat. And we would describe this as our minor 7th / augmented 6th. We could call it that. I'm going to leave out the augmented because we understand that now, right? We understand that now, that A sharp would be the augmented. Minor 7th is going to be a bit more popular. Okay, I hope this makes sense so far. We could do this same process over here by counting up our notes. So if I complete this, let me complete this just so there's no doubt in anyone's mind, right? And so C to C half steps. 1 half step, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can count up the half steps to find what the interval is. Now, I've said this in a previous video, that learning these intervals and these relationships is a little bit like multiplication tables. The more that you do this, the quicker you'll be being like, oh, D to A, perfect fifth. Boom, got it. But you have to practice. I practiced a lot. I also had professors who encouraged me to practice a lot and would quiz us frequently on these types of things. And so you can do it yourself by selecting 2 letters from the musical alphabet and try your best as quickly as you can, as quickly and as accurately, to find what the distance is between them. Start with the quantity. Quantity is easier to get because you're just counting, starting at 1, you're just counting how many letters is it going through, essentially. Now, there's a little more caveat. I have a little more caveat to that. If you're starting on a flat or a sharp, then you have to keep track of a couple things, but that's for another video or that's for later in your studies. This is the really quick way to get into this. So if you have any questions, you can post them in the comments or send me an email. If you're in my class, you have my email. And I'll be glad to answer them as best I can. And yeah, that's all for this video. So thank you for watching. And I hope you're having a nice life. So yeah, and I'll see you at the next one. Maybe. I don't know. Hopefully. See you.